Greetings, Monday afternoon. I'm Johnny King here. Jumped into a place to record as we close in on the Rugby World Cup squad to be named in basically a couple of hours by Ian Foster. And the team not far away from discussing that and talking about what the names will be. Excuse me. I'm sure that most of us will be able to name maybe in the early 30s. Maybe a couple of contentious or disagreements. So in this video, really to, in some respects, to document beforehand and to provide my own reflections on who maybe could be in, maybe whom I would have in, but also to talk about, I guess, the various dynamics that are going to be part of it. And it's encouraged me, what has encouraged me, I should say, has been following this article here and on stuff by Mark Hinton and talking about David Havili. David Havili was in my squad and one of the few, maybe the only one who's outside of things who make him in. I would have another, and we'll get to that. So he put the names down he chose, and so I'll discuss it in light of that. My names, some things that have happened with Brodie Retallick or potentially could happen, and the ramifications there. So my 33, or the 33 potentially. I mean, the forwards, let's start there. If we're going to have a 19-14 breakdown, that generally dominance in the forwards. So the hookers, I think most people would be able to, have their three hookers, who'll be Taylor, Takiaho, and Coles. No issues there. Now, the props is an interesting one. How many props do you have? Are you picking 5 or are you taking 6? And now that we have an extra prop on the bench, which has been for a while, then we have specialists. So covering both sides isn't necessarily important, but what happens if something else comes into the reckoning, like an injury to Brodie Retallick that is being reported, which could keep him out for 4 to 6 weeks? What if it doesn't go exactly according to plan? Do you take an extra lock? So say you take, let's go through the props. So Ethan de Groot, Tyrell Lomax, definite. Ethan de Groot, Tyrell Lomax are starting props. I would throw in that Fletcher, Newell, and probably Ofatunga Fasi are probably pretty confirmed, especially after the weekend and what they were able to do off the bench. And Ofatunga Fasi can play both sides. Fletcher Newell was around last year, so not a big call there. What do you do about the other 2 spots? If those are 4 and you're taking 6, and the other names are Joe Moody, who we know Joe Moody, an experienced prop forward, an experienced loose head. They are, they're what you want. I mean, at business time, you want to have someone who you can trust, but he hasn't played much. How do you balance those things? And then, of course, Tamaiti Williams and Nipo Laulala. So say you're taking 6 props. You've got 7 names there. Whom do you leave out? Who do you leave out? Who is it? Is it Joe Moody? Hasn't played much. Is it Nipo Laulala because, he sort of hasn't been, but this season he's been strong? Is it Tamaiti Williams? His lack of experience when it comes down to it, all the benefits that will be and are there? Is it too much? That one penalty we've seen in the 2 test matches, Australia and the All Blacks, Australia paying for their inability in the scrum. Los Pumas and South Africa, Los Pumas paying for it because of their inability in the scrum. Whom do you take? Who do you take? It's an interesting one. If you take 5, so say you take 5 props, and you potentially take neither Joe Moody or Laulala, because Ofatunga Fasi and Tamaiti Williams can play both sides because you want that because you've only got 5 props. So those are the configurations. So it's not necessarily straightforward. Let's move on because we could be here for a while. Locks, I think they picked themselves. Scott Barrett, Brodie Retallick, Tupavai, and Sam Whitelock. Now, Retallick's injury. Do you take someone like a Lord, Josh Lord, as a 5th lock? I personally wouldn't, even if he's questionable, because I would be saying against the lesser teams, then I'm looking at guys like Sammy Penny-Finau and Shannon Frizzell who can cover the locking position for one of those games. So, yeah, all those configurations there. So, let's go to the loose forwards. Shannon Frizzell, Sam Cane, Ardie Savea, Sammy Penny-Finau, Dalton Papali'i, Luke Jacobson. I would have taken Ethan Blackadder if he was fit if he was playing, but he keeps getting injured. And I don't think, in light of the propensity and the proclivity for him to be injured, you take him and again, he comes right, and then he's off in a game. So I think he's ideal as a bench player, but it just doesn't seem like, it almost seems like he needs to take a really sustained break and allow his body to recover. Some have susceptibilities. It's quite fascinating there in terms of grasping the dynamics there and how it's going to flow. I mean, some potentially would take an extra loose forward then, and maybe another one just to cover because of the toll on that spot and the likelihood that the players will be injured. And that may be more so when it comes to knockout time, and assuming you last through each round. So interesting where the All Black selectors will go. I don't think there are many names that are difficult. It's probably in the propping context where there may be question marks. And in light of how important, I just saw today, Sir Steve Hansen talking about the 2019 World Cup, saying this squad is stronger than then. And I agree with what he said in terms about the scrum and about I was concerned watching. I watched our backup front row, especially props, come on and get dealt to, and that was concerning. And you realise in knockout time, when there's like 5 or 10 minutes to go and there's a scrum, that you get penalised, and that could be your World Cup. And so you've got to have those basics. You've got to have those cornerstones. And so when I look at that, you see the benefit of a Joe Moody, don't you? And you say, well, okay, if it's a really strong scrum, and maybe it's something like South Africa, then you know you can bring these guys on. They can be trusted. You have a second front row, basically a second starting front row, and it does the business and raises to the next level. So we'll see. We'll see what they decide when they announce in a matter of hours. So the back line. Now, there's probably potentially more moving parts here. What do you do at halfback, scrum half? You're taking 3. Well, I think Aaron Smith and Cam Roigard, in my mind, they're there. And the third halfback that I would take, and I've said this previously in other media, is Brad Weber. And primarily because my third halfback, I want him to be as similar to Aaron Smith as possible. And for me, that's Brad Weber. He's also experienced. He'll also be a great tourist if he's not playing very often. I don't want the closest to Aaron Smith to be outside the squad and then bring him in. I want him to be there and with that clarity, because Cam Roigard would be my backup, and clearly he provides a point of difference. Now, some may say, well, Finlay Christie can also provide a point of difference, but throughout the season and even in this previous test, although not entirely because of the previous test, I thought he showed why I wouldn't take him. I think getting to the breakdowns, getting to service, there's just too many creaks and too many cracks there for mine, and I think Brad Weber can provide what we require, or what the All Blacks require. It was interesting. I was watching the breakdown last night, and Jeff Wilson made the same commentary as myself on Brad Weber, Aaron Smith, but he came to the conclusion that you take Finlay Christie, and it is difficult. Finlay Christie's been here throughout the season. You've gone through. You've been successful. Do you change? Do you make this type of change, not just an injury type of change, but a type of change which is much larger in terms of its commentary into the squad? Well, we'll see. We'll see. I think this is quite fascinating. Richie Mo'unga and Damien McKenzie, the first fives, fly halves. Of course, Beauden Barrett can come in there. Midfield, Geordie Barrett, Rieko Ioane. And now it can get interesting. What do you do here? David Havili, yes, I bring him in. He was there before. He has leadership. He can cover 15 as well. So you got 12 and 15, so you can put him at 13 as well if required, and any of those positions, really. I think he's played first 5. So a guy who has the mana, who has, I think, what will be important and can provide those options. Now, other people may put Anton Leonard-Brown here, but Anton Leonard-Brown, for mine, I think he'll go. I think I'd be surprised if he didn't go. Very surprised, in fact. Would we even say shocked? However, his play, while I think has really good bench potential and is experienced and all those various factors, character, and I like the guy, It concerned me last Rugby World Cup, he and Jack Goodhue in the midfield. They just seemed a little bit, if I can say, vanilla in terms of their style. See, if I'm making choices, I'm not thinking about Anton Lienert-Brown, but I'm thinking about the larger picture. I'm thinking about a guy like Lester Whanganuku who can cover 13. Who, in fact, I would be pressing towards 13 because I think he creates. He's more of a creator than a finisher. Now, he can finish, and he does finish, but I think what he can provide in terms of taking the straight lines, in terms of taking on tacklers, in terms of getting the ball over the advantage line, for me, if he's not starting in 13, then he must be on the bench, and bring him on and whether it be on a wing or in the midfield to do something, to get momentum going, to provide impetus to our attack. So, and then of course, I'll get to sort of, I guess, the larger question. So Lester Whanganuku's there. So I have 4 midfielders. I put Lester Whanganuku there, even though more so on the wing. Then you got Will Jordan and Mark Telea, who have been, especially Jordan, who views himself as a fullback but has been placed as a winger in the All Blacks primarily, and Beauden Barrett at fullback. And therefore that leaves me with taking 2 of the following 3. Caleb Clark, Imoni Narawa, and Anton Lienert-Brown. You can take 2 of those 3. So the easy way to solve maybe how some are viewing it would be, yes, Anton Lienert-Brown's one of those. I think that's probably where they'll go. The question is, who do you take out of Caleb Clark and Imoni Narawa? Who are you taking? Caleb Clark's been around. He's fit. He does provide. He's a little bit different. But Imoni Narawa is such an explosive player, but he's been injured and he's having issues apparently with his back. So where do you go there? If they're both fully fit, who do you take? Who do you take? I'm inclined, this is my own thinking, I'm inclined to take both Clark and Narawa because of their breakout ability. Of course you can't play both, but you have those options there because I do think there's a point of difference. Narawa's more elusive, more electric. Clark is more of a blockbuster, and you know what you're going to get from him, but he's going to make the defenders pay. He's going to be like he's almost like a little prop forward or a little hook. He's almost like a Safa or Moore, but just with a bit more gas. Maybe a bit more gas. And Moore's pretty quick. It can be similar to that. So I like that, because when I'm thinking of the squad, I'm not just thinking about the individual. I'm thinking about the collective and each part and what that can provide for an All Blacks recipe on game day. So those are my, not necessarily easy to follow. I haven't got a nice graphics package up for you in terms of who I've named, but maybe I'll go through them and see if my counting is up to it. So Cody Taylor, Samisoni Takiaho, Dane Coles, Ethan de Groot, Tyrell Lomax, Joe Moody, Fletcher Newell, Ofa Tungafasi, Tamaiti Williams, Scott Barrett, Brodie Retallick, Tupu Vai, Sam Whitelock, I'm not going to keep counting, I think I know where I'm going, Shannon Frizzell, Sam Kane, Adi Sevilla, Sammy Penny-Finau, Dalton Papali'i, Luke Jacobson, Aaron Smith, Cam Roygard, Brad Weber, Richie Mo'unga, Damien McKenzie, Geordie Barrett, Rieko Ioane, David Havili, Lester Whanganuku, Will Jordan, Mark Telea, Beauden Barrett, Caleb Clark, and Imoni Narawa. That would probably be my Rugby World Cup squad. I don't think it'll be Ian Foster's Rugby World Cup squad. Mine doesn't have to play, his does. And so, obviously, we know the important one that counts. I do think that Anton Lienert-Brown will be there, and I think he deserves a spot. It's not that there isn't an issue. I just think that in terms of what he can offer, because I'm thinking on the bench primarily with an Anton Lienert-Brown. If he's starting in the big matches for us, I think that's not we're not going to be in our prime place. I don't think he offers enough, even though he's come off the bench and shown. I saw in the MCG test, I was encouraged and impressed by what he was able to give, his enthusiasm, his desire, his hunger. And so he has the experience from 2019. So that really does, that counts. That is significant. So if Imoni Narawa, if he's not, if there are question marks around him, much like Ethan Blackadder, we'll call it the Ethan Blackadder rule. If Narawa is the same as Blackadder, then Narawa is out and ALB's in there. So maybe I have got some flexibility there. This video has gone on long enough. You're going to be watching Ian Foster and crew talk about the World Cup squad and celebrating, and maybe you'll actually get this video after the fact, and then when I do another video in a couple of hours on the Rugby World Cup squad and talk about it, and maybe say many of the similar things, you'll be like, interesting. Well, I'll let you go because I actually have other things to say, and so we're going to do another video. Thanks for listening and watching.